This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to another episode of the Chokeslam Wrestling Report. I am your host, the infamous Ultimate One, and you saw AEW tonight, and it was wild. As you can see, the thumbnail right here, it says Jay White and Moxley, they stole the show with the Continental Challenge Cup wrestling match, and this was their third time meeting and whatnot. Then we saw the explosion that was happening during the night between Ospreay and Omega. This is what we expected, and of course the woman Willow and Mercedes Moné went at it and they brawled it out, and this was the type of show that we expected. A lot of people probably weren't too happy in the beginning of the show because automatically they saw names that they weren't familiar with, and to top it off, if you think about it, the first match of the night was United Empire versus the Don Callis family. Of course, the United Empire is with Will Ospreay, of course, Henare and Francisco Akira. Most of these United States fans don't know who these guys are, because they probably don't watch New Japan Pro Wrestling and whatnot. But this was interesting because I didn't see this coming. I mean, we saw that the G1 Climax tournament ended this past weekend, and already we saw Henare, who is part of the United Empire. Then we saw Francisco Akira, who's also part of the United Empire. Now, these guys came out with Callum Newman's theme song. Well, when I heard that, I said to myself, well, it could be a possibility that Callum Newman might come out. You know what I'm saying? And it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? It didn't happen because I guess he didn't make the trip. But it was very interesting to see these guys come out and whatnot in the middle of the show and whatnot. And I was very, 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 very surprised that they actually came out, So this is the second time that we have seen, Will Ospreay come out of nowhere and whatnot and have members of the of the United Empire come to AEW to fight some of his battle. You know what I'm saying? And, it's kind of, to me, the way I look at it is it's kind of crazy because first time they showed up was back in April when Moxley had issue with the Death Riders, and what happened? They had the situation where they came in, they came in, they fought the Death Riders, they won the match, and then all of a sudden we saw the Wrestling Don't Tackle where Ospreay went to Japan and Callum was calling him a Death Rider. He said, I'm not a Death Rider. And as we saw the last couple of months, Will Ospreay became a Death Rider. So here we are tonight, seeing members of the United Empire being part of this match against the Don Callis family. And when I saw the United Empire and then the theme music of Callum Newman, I was like, oh, Callum Newman's here. Tonight is when these guys turn on Will Ospreay. Well, that was not to be. That's not what happened. You know what I'm saying? So this match between the Don Callis family and the United Empire was pretty good. You know what I'm saying? This was a good match. But my question to this whole match, I mean, even though the United Empire won this match, my question is the second time Ospreay has asked for help from the United Empire. And like I said earlier, we saw him asking for that same help back in April against the Death Riders. Now, mind you, let's not forget, as we saw this during the interview between Omega and Ospreay, Omega mentioned Don Callis. Don Callis brought in Will Ospreay to go after Omega and whatnot after Omega beat Ospreay in Japan in their first match. So Don Callis brought in Ospreay to wrestle Omega and whatnot, which leads us right now to what happened at that Forbidden Door. Ospreay used the screwdriver to beat Omega and whatnot. But again, my point in the first match is United Empire members, right? So United Empire members in the match again tonight, helping Will Ospreay battle another faction that he used to be part of, which was the Don Callis family. So this is leading up to a lot of stuff because, I mean, we saw the ending of the G1 Climax and we saw the returning of Gabe Kidd tonight. So that's a lot of stuff. And I've been mentioning this and we've been talking about it since April about a possibility of AEW wrestlers feuding with New Japan wrestlers, especially what Gabe Kidd has been doing, going back and forth to New Japan, having the AEW shirt and whatnot, representing that he's part of the Death Riders and all that. But it's funny because that's another thing I want to talk about tonight, about that whole Death Rider and the whole thing, which is leading me to believe of what I've been saying for a couple of weeks now. But this whole Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega was very interesting during the night and whatnot, you know? So, but then before after the match of the United Empire versus Don Callis family, again, with United Empire winning, we saw an interview with Kazuchika Okada and whatnot, where they were asking him about his match with Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita, the three-way for the All Elite International title. Okada said he expects Fletcher to be happy for him if he beats him because the belt will still stay in the family, you know, and whatnot. And he said he actually expects Fletcher to raise his hand. Now, it's funny because the way they did this tonight, and I love the way AEW did this and whatnot, because tonight's AEW was very good. Now, the problem with that is next week is the go-home show. So they're going to have to top that for what they did tonight and whatnot. But after Okada said that if he beats Fletcher, he should be happy for him, and he actually expects him to raise his hand, Fletcher had a promo interview with Tony Schiavone, and Fletcher responded by saying he thinks his reign will not end at All In. And he said Okada needs to know his role and back him up to take Takeshita out. So now he's saying that Okada knows his role in the family. Whereas to me, it's funny because you do not see Mr. What's his name? Don Callis anywhere to be found. He's nowhere to be found through all this craziness tonight with the Don Callis family. So there's a lot of bitter fighting within the family, and Don Callis is just not saying nothing. So Fletcher keeps saying that there's a plan. I don't know what the plan he's talking about, but he's talking about that Okada needs to know his role and that he needs to back him up to take Takeshita out. Now, while he was saying that, Takeshita came out and whatnot. And Takeshita went and took out Fletcher with the Raging Fire powerbomb. And Okada never came out to help Fletcher out. Interesting. Very interesting. So there is a lot of issues right now in the Don Callis family. We already seen that we saw Takeshita leave the Don Callis family. We've seen Andrade leaves in the Don Callis family. And, it's crazy. It's crazy that how you call it, that all these bitter fighting within the group, and Don Callis is nowhere to be found and whatnot. So it's crazy. Then we had the interview with Omega and Ospreay, and that's more to what there was that this interview was, because this interview was crazy. Because this interview, you had Omega pretty much saying that when he would he first saw Ospreay in New Japan, he wasn't impressed with Ospreay. He could claim that he wasn't a ticket seller. You know what I'm saying? That he wasn't a ticket seller. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, he tried to downplay what Ospreay has done with New Japan and whatnot, but Ospreay claimed Omega would have been able to handle the COVID era when Ospreay was over there in New Japan, and there was so many, you know, protocols and all that stuff, and he's fighting with 10, 15 people in arenas and whatnot, and he had to fly back and forth. He couldn't fly back and forth to New England, to England and all that stuff, and fight in Japan and all that. So he was telling Omega he couldn't have been able to handle it if that would have been him in Japan during the COVID era, right? And then Omega claimed that even if there was 15 fans were not going to cheer for Ospreay. Omega then claimed Ospreay couldn't beat him without Don Callis, which again, it's what I was saying, but he used the screwdriver in Forbidden Door in 2023. He said he forgives him, but then he questions Ospreay if he's ready for him after his neck surgery. And then he went to another level. He went to a low blow by saying, you know, after he beats him, his 7-year-old son is going to look at him as a hero. So Omega is already throwing daggers. He's making it personal and whatnot, which is making it, you know, now we're seeing the heel kind of Kenny Omega, the old New Japan Kenny Omega when he fought Okada, when he was part of the Bullet Club. So we're seeing that side of Omega and whatnot. So this was very interesting. This really, really caught my eye. I mean, this was the best thing that happened during the night so far, because this was telling the story. I mean, because a lot of people are saying that All In is not as the whole format of the All In stuff. It's not as good as it was back in the days. Well, you can't expect All In to be the same the way it was back in 2022, whatever it was, or 2023 when they first did it. You know, things change. You're not going to have 80,000 people because, you know, you have all these wrestling fans thinking, AEW is only selling 50,000. They're not going to do the 80,000. We were expected to sell 80,000 because they already seen it. People been in Wembley and whatnot, but they're still going to get 50,000. Unlike, you know, another company who lies and say that they have such and such, and then turn out there was a lie, and we found that out today. And I posted it on my Twitter, and I posted it on my Facebook account, the Chokeslam Wrestling Report account. So whether they get 50,000 or whether they get 40,000, they're still going to have people watching them. It doesn't really matter. So the Ospreay and Omega match, I still think there's a lot of things that are going to go happen in this, in this title match. You still got MJF. He's going to be a factor. You don't know if Jon Moxley might be a factor on that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of things can happen where Will Ospreay does not win the world title. It's a 57% chance that he may win it because he's going to be the first UK wrestler to win a world title in the UK. We could see it. But I still feel that something's going to happen that he may not win it. So we'll see what happens after that. And then after that, we had the Sheeta versus Persephone versus Stanley and Maya World. This was a great match between all four ladies. But the bigger shocker for me, which I was hoping that Maya did not lose the belt and whatnot, because she just got the belt. And if you have a loser, then we having the same issue we've been having for years with the TNT title as of recent. Now the title has not gotten shit because Kevin Knight has that belt. But I didn't want this Maya World to lose the belt. And she pinned the former TBS champion, Chris Stanley, which this shows me that TK thinks highly on Maya because she still has the belt and whatnot. And now this Saturday, she's supposed to wrestle Willow, but her title will not be on the line. Willow's title will be on the line because she promised her a title shot. So that's very interesting to see. Then we saw MJF's lawyer. I knew he was going to get wiped out. Not much to talk about. Andrades came in and he then called out MJF. Andrades took him out and actually it made a match, which was a squash match because he beat him like nothing. And when MJF came, he called out MJF. MJF came out through a video uh, um, like a video through this big screen. They're talking about he was in Long Island. Nothing much came out of that, but it's going to be interesting in that whole scenario where we'll probably see. Well, no, we probably see it's going to happen because we're definitely going to see. What's his name? Oh God, we're definitely going to see Andrades versus MJF number 1 and 2 for the gauntlet. So it's just going to be very interesting and whatnot. So then we have the Hechicero versus Nigel McGuiness. Now I thought Nigel was going to lose this match because he hurt himself against Shibata this past weekend and whatnot. And I think he may have hurt his foot if it was no fracture or anything, but he was able to he was able to wrestle the match even though Hechicero was going after his leg. He played it kind of smart because he kept going after Hechicero's mask, which, even though he was risking disqualification, because if you could take the mask off, that would be a disqualification. So, but he fought with the injury, whatever, and just said, okay, working on his leg until he did the mistake where he tried to grab again the leg of Nigel, and Nigel's caught him in a chokehold and put him to sleep and whatnot. So that was very interesting and whatnot. So before I continue, I didn't go back to the match of the night before this McGuiness, the Jay White versus Jon Moxley and whatnot. This match stole the whole show. And I know I skipped it right now, but I'm going to go into it right now. This match stole the whole show because this match, first of all, Jay White had his neck taped up with keto tape. You know what I'm saying? He had it wrapped and he looked better. I was kind of worried about it because he hurt himself last week. David Finlay kept working on that neck, and at one point he tried to do the dragon suplex, and he kind of hurt himself by doing the dragon suplex on David Finlay. And this week, that was my concern, but he had Moxley hurt. Okay, and now this match was awesome. And JK close to beating Mox for the 3rd straight time in his career because he has beaten Mox twice. And he almost beat him again tonight, but Mox pulled him to sleep. Okay, and trust me, he put him to sleep with a point where I thought he was going to be able to get out. Moxley tried to put him to sleep about a couple of times, but Jay White, I think Jay White even hit him with the switchblade, blade run actually, and Moxley ended up falling right by the ring area and whatnot, and he was able to escape. You know what I'm saying? He was able to get out the ring and whatnot, and he was able to get away with it. But Moxley ends up winning this match, and during that match, during the post match, I thought that Moxley was going to shake hands with Jay White. I didn't want that to happen because Jay White and Moxley have been rivals for years. And out of nowhere came the War Dogs, and I knew they was coming. The War Dogs came in, but here's the crazy part that had me thinking, like, why did Mox came down? Ain't the War Dogs part of the Death Riders? And this is what I keep saying. Every match, it looks like Moxley wants to shake hands with his opponent. And the Death Riders are supposed to be heels. And to me, I have a feeling that sometime before the end of this year, I'm going to see Moxley get jumped by the Death Riders and the War Dogs. It's going to happen. Gabe Kidd came back. Gabe Kidd came back from the G1. He's back in AEW and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? This is the guy who started this whole thing with AEW in Japan. He's back. But the interesting part is after they jumped Jay White, the conglomeration came out to help him. But that's what Gabe Kidd showed up. So now we had the conglomeration getting jumped. Then Brodido and Hangman came out. Then you had the Demand come out. But Hangman made a challenge. And he said he made a challenge that they'll put the trio on the line, which means any team. Now, this was very interesting because he said any team, right? So I'm figuring, okay, who's going to be all this team together? Swerve said, you better make sure that that's what you really meant. To me, Swerve is probably going to come out with the New Day. Yes, you heard me correctly, the New Day. That's going to be his tag teams, either them or the Hurt Business or the Hurt Syndicate. One of those two teams. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to see. This is going to be very interesting. I'm going to definitely be looking forward to that coming up and whatnot. So it's going to be very interesting to see that happen and whatnot. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens because, New Day show up at AEW, it's gonna be crazy, and I feel like that's definitely gonna happen. It's probably gonna be New Day and whatnot. If it's not New Day, then it could be the Hurt Syndicate. They come out, have their third member. You know, because remember, MVP been saying he needs a third member. So who knows? You know what I'm saying? So again, I didn't mean to skip this part about the White Jon Moxley, but that's what happened. The Kevin Knight promo tonight, he set up Darby Allin and whatnot. And as Darby was coming near the pyro, the pyros went off, hit him in the face. And Kevin Knight went and grabbed him, hit him. Actually, Kevin Knight hit him with the belt, then threw him inside the ring, put a chair in his face, put him like in a grapevine in the corner, and then he did the coast to coast drop kick on him. And if people notice, Steve Borton's son, also knows Sting's son was who came out to help Darby. And it looks like they're gonna probably put Darby and Steve Borton Jr. I think that's his name, Steve Borton. Stephen Borton is gonna be the tag team partner of Darby Allin. I can see it happening. So he looks just like his father. Same way, everything. So, you know, people didn't notice he was there. He was in the back with him also when they showed him, taking him to the back. So then we had the Elite versus Don Callis, and this was the main event of the night. And then this match, the Elite won this match. You know, it was a back and forth situation. And in the post match, the Don Callis family ended up attacking the Elite. Copeland comes out to help the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. Then after that, Christian Cage was in the top of the ramp and was taking his sweet time to come in. And when he came in, you know, he came to help. And then when they were trying to hold Beretta for a double super kick, the Young Bucks by mistake hit Christian Cage. And it was a whole mix up in the whole night. But the fun part of the night from the main event was Kenny Omega was about to get on the mic, and then all of a sudden you see Will Ospreay come out and said, "You said you was going to talk to me," because before the match started, Ospreay approached Kenny Omega and told him something. I don't know what it was, but I know Kenny Omega then got into his heel Kenny Omega and told him, about he called him a bitch at one point because, Ospreay said, "You mentioned my son in the interview and whatnot, and I don't like that." And then Omega was like, "Call security to take Ospreay to the back," and he called Ospreay a bitch. Ospreay then went into the ring, attacked Omega, and as the security tried to hold Ospreay away from Omega, Omega hit him with the V trigger. Then Omega went and decided to go, and there was a table outside, went and hit him with the one wing NU through the table and let them lay. And that was the end of the show. Now, my thing is, this show was pretty good. Now, there's going to be questions. Actually, a lot of questions were answered tonight and whatnot. Now for next week, is MJF will be in the house. Is Andrade going to get his hands on him, even though MJF said you will not see him until All In. The Omega and Ospreay storyline is going great. You know what I'm saying? The only storylines that I'm not too crazy about is the Brawling Birds versus Divine Dominion. They're not pushing that as hard as they're supposed to, but I believe that the Brawling Birds are going to be new tag team champions. The Mercedes and Willow, that went berserk. These girls went at it and whatnot. I didn't get to it real quick, but those girls brawl out, and I'm talking about they were hitting each other hard and whatnot. They had security trying to hold them back, and Willow was not having it. Willow was punching everybody. She didn't care. So this match is going to be interesting. Now, my question is Is Mercedes Moné going to win that title? I still say no. They're not going to take the belt away from Willow just like that. I think she'll retain the belt, and then Mercedes she's going to have to humble herself some way or the other, because, the last part of her not winning the belt for her third try, it can happen. You know what I'm saying? But these girls went at it. It's going to be a great match between these two. Every time these two get together, it's magic. They fought in New Japan when Mercedes broke her leg in the tournament for the New Japan Strong Women's title. She beat her for the TBS belt and whatnot, even though Mercedes beat her 1-1. And then, so they, Willow has a 2-1 advantage. So do I see Willow losing the belt to Mercedes? That's very questionable. But the biggest question is, will Ospreay win the belt in England, in UK, coming up? So let me know what you guys think about this episode, guys. Thank you very much for listening and whatnot. So, check out my podcast, my audio podcast. Also, if you guys haven't checked that out, it's the same thing as stuff like this. Also, check out my YouTube channel, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you guys have not listened to any of the episodes this past weekend. We did the WWE, botches and all that. And then we did last week's AEW or Dynamite wrap up also and whatnot. So check that out. Check out my channel, guys. Also, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and the X. Of course, you guys find me there and whatnot. But again, this show was a very great show. It wasn't like last week. Last week was like a little. This week, actually, last week was a little confusing, especially with the whole Swerve going into the ring, confronting Brodido and Hangman. But this week, it pretty much shows you they might have a four-way trios match. The way they doing this now, because you got the War Dogs, or the Dogs, you want to call them. You're gonna have Swerve. Who knows who he's bringing? He may bring, like I said, New Day or the Hurt Syndicate. You got the Demand. You got Dan Brodido. So we're gonna see a four-way trios world title match. That's gonna be interesting. Kevin Knight and Darby, that match, that's gonna be crazy, because what Kevin Knight did to him tonight and whatnot is trust me, I could see Darby doing crazy shit, probably throwing him with fire. Who knows what's coming for Kevin Knight? Kevin Knight don't know what he got himself into. You know what I'm saying? And whatnot. And the fact that we saw the United Empire in AEW tonight, is Kyle Newman showing up at AEW after All In? Or does Kyle Newman confront Will Ospreay at All In? Because this is not staying. Again, this whole New Japan with the United Empire, because remember, Will Ospreay is part of the 6-man tag team never openweight champion with Hanari and Great-O-Khan. In case for those who don't follow New Japan. So that's going to be interesting. I'm sure that once he wins the world title, do not be surprised if you see Callum Newman show up at AEW. I would not be surprised. You know what I'm saying? This is getting very interesting. I like it. We got 1 week to go. Then next Sunday will be All In. I cannot wait for this. I cannot wait to see the Omega versus Ospreay, because those guys, they brought the house down 2 times. They wrestle each other. So we'll see. Until then, guys, I will see you next week with more of the Chokeslam Wrestling Report. This week we are going to be talking about, in Saturday's podcast, we're definitely going to be talking about the Sunday night main event, where it's going to be featured Braun Breaker versus Obafemi. Well, why is that on a Sunday night main event instead of a PLE? We're going to be talking about that this weekend. And check any other episode that you guys may have missed. Again, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on Instagram, again, Facebook, and the X. And I will see you guys next week with more of the AEW Dynamite recap and whatnot, and the Chokeslam Wrestling Report.